All right, Jim Kwik, you are one of the world's leading brain performance coaches. I've got some questions for you.
All right.
I want to hear what your 10 golden rules would be for optimizing brain performance or cognition.
Okay, so growing up with a brain injury and having lost my grandmother to Alzheimer's, brain health is something that's extremely important to me, near and dear to my heart. Let's do it. I know approximately 1/3 of our brain performance is genetic. Research suggests about 2/3 is in our control. So I'll talk about 10 things that fall within that domain in no particular order. So the first one I would say is a good brain diet, something you've talked a lot about. What you eat matters, especially for your gray matter. And so there's a whole area of science called neuronutrition, where your brain, where it's only 2% of your body mass, but requires 20% of the nutrients, and some of those nutrients are a little different than the rest of the body. Some of my favorite foods when it comes to brain are avocados, and I like blueberries. Partial to that, I call them brain berries. Broccoli is a great brain food. Olive oil, eggs. I like to eat the choline in eggs. Is wonderful for cognitive health. So a good brain diet is kind of where I start. You talk about bone broth,
yeah,
which is great. The collagen, anti-inflammatory, help create brain glutathione, which is very important. Fish, wild salmon, sardines. Our brain is mostly fats, but you get your omega-3s and your DHAs. Turmeric, the curcumin in turmeric is very anti-inflammatory. So I like to mix that with some of my broccoli and some of the foods that we make. Walnuts, high in vitamin E, neuroprotective, and probably my favorite is dark chocolate. So that's my primary brain foods. How about yourself? Is there anything on that list
one of the things you may want to consider doing is adding a probiotic in as well. Simply when you're trying to add more fiber, you're trying to remodel the gut microbiome. I put a link down below for 25% off of Seed, which is my preferred probiotic. I don't typically recommend that people use probiotics a lot unless they're trying to make a change. I recommend you do it with fiber as much as you can, but sometimes you need a little help getting started. So it is what is called a synbiotic. It has a capsule inside of a capsule, so really interesting tech. Now they also are funding a lot of research on the gut-brain axis specifically for mental health, which makes them very unique in my mind. But also, who doesn't like to save some money? So that 25% off discount link for Seed Daily Synbiotic is down below in the top line of the description.
You nailed it with blueberries, right?
Yeah.
The anthocyanins in blueberries, that's one of the most heavily demonstrated antioxidants for the brain. Yeah. So it's one that, and maybe it's anecdotal and maybe it's my placeboing myself, but it's like, if I eat like a pint of those things, yeah, I feel it. Like I legitimately feel it. And I know it's not the sugar, because anytime I have regular sugar, it's like it does the opposite.
Right.
So it's something in the blueberries and the literature on the anthocyanins. Same with the eggs, right? And like when I was really strict keto, it was like, ditch some of the whites and just go straight for the yolk.
Right. So can we go to the second thing?
Yeah,
let's
move on. So that was number one, was food.
Yeah. This one I took from our mutual friend, and I have a podcast. We've had him on the show also, Dr. Daniel Amen, Killing Ants, Automatic Negative Thoughts. So I feel like that our brain is this incredible supercomputer, and our self-talk is the program it will run. So if you tell yourself, I'm not good at remembering people's names, we probably won't remember the name of the next person we meet, because we program our supercomputer not to. I believe that all behavior is belief driven, that if you want to create a new result, let's say in health or your work or some area of your life, you have to do a new behavior. But in order to do that new behavior, you need an empowering belief that says that is possible. And so, we do a lot of work with internal beliefs and learned helplessness. Some people could feel stuck. Maybe they feel stuck in a box where they can't get out of, and they're not making progress. Limitless is not about being perfect. It's about advancing and progressing beyond what you currently believe is possible. But I feel like, doing an audit of our beliefs, like some people believe it's not possible, or maybe it's possible for somebody else like you, but not possible for them. Or maybe people believe that they don't deserve it, at some level. And so I like to address those kind of issues, because I find that mindset, your set of assumptions and attitudes about a subject, makes a big difference whether you use the methods or not. And so that would be my second one. is having those empowering thoughts. And if you catch yourself saying, I don't have a great memory, just auditing and editing it, like, I don't have a great memory yet, I feel like opens up the possibility. Even things like that I find myself saying, oh, I got to work out today, I got to get my steps in, I got to meditate, whatever it is. If I just change the word got to get, it just feels differently. That one letter from an O to an E changes my response, and I look forward to it. I think gratitude is an important thing to anchor in everything that we do, that what you appreciate tends to appreciate, in your life.
I've noticed that as well. Just like, even if sometimes you have to almost fake it till you make it a little bit, it's just exactly what you're saying. If you just, walk into a room and be grateful of people's time, of this, everything, it's at first, sometimes it feels, oh, maybe this feels awkward. But then within moments of doing that, you're like, wait a minute, I've created this atmosphere that like feels good, and it feels good to do unto others. Right. But also, I've adopted that same, like, even with my own meditation practice, my discipline that I try to be strict with, sometimes I will find myself being like, oh, I got to go meditate. I'm like, wait a minute. No, this is a blessing. This is a pleasure that I get to go meditate. Yeah. My life gives me the luxury of some time where I get to go meditate, and it just changes everything, right?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is for fulfillment. I think you need two things: the curiosity to know yourself. That's why people go to talk therapy, or they meditate, or they journal. But then also, once you get to know yourself, having the courage to be that person also. There's a quote in my book, Limitless, that says, life is the letter C between B and D, where B stands for birth, D stands for death, life C, choice. That our lives are the sum total of all the choices we've made up to this point. And I believe that these difficult times, they could distract us. These difficult times can diminish us, or these difficult times, they could develop us. Ultimately, we decide with the choices that we make. And so the second choice I would make is just auditing our own belief system, our own self-talk, and make sure that it's in our favor.
Very much so.
Yeah. Number 3, I would say exercise. So exercise in the brain, I'm sure you could quote a number of studies, but not just working out 3 or 4 or 5 times a week, but just moving throughout the day. You've talked about this on your show, and our team, I was telling you, are big fans of your show. They're always posting in our Slack as great reminders. So thank you for that. But moving throughout the day, they say sitting is the new smoking. We're behind screens all the time. The primary reason we have a brain is to control our movement, and as our body moves, our brain grooves, right? When you exercise, you create brain-derived neurotropic factors, BDNF, which is like fertilizer for the brain, for neuroplasticity and neurogenesis. So, and then when I'm going through this, I would challenge everybody who's listening and watching to maybe assess themselves 0 to 10. How much energy are you putting into a good brain diet, right? How much energy and attention are you putting towards, having empowering thoughts to combat those automatic negative thoughts, those ants? And then movement, 0 to 10. I always try to get my steps in, as an example. Like to take a little brain break and get off the screen for 5 or 10 minutes, get some fresh air, get some sunlight, move my body. And I find that doing so, it kind of cleans out the mental cobwebs and makes me much more creative. And it rejuvenates me to go back, with a level of focus and vitality.
Yeah, and you're also, it doesn't have to be intense either. It can be pretty low-key exercise. It doesn't take a lot, and if you do want to ramp it up, then, the more lactate that you build up, the more BDNF you have. So the harder the workout, arguably, even better long-term benefit. But for people who are saying, oh no, I don't have the time to go get a workout in. Like you're implying, it's just like, take a walk around the block. It's amazing what it does for your immediate state, but also long-term up here too.
Yeah, absolutely. I think as your body moves, again, your brain grooves. Yeah. You make those connections, because everyone, you hear about that mind-body connection, but there's also a body-mind connection that when you move your body, it could stimulate different parts of your brain. There was a study in Oxford University saying that jugglers, just the act of learning how to juggle, they created more white matter, which is interesting. So some of my favorite things to move, I've played many rounds of table tennis with Dr. Daniel Amen. Dance is wonderful, in terms of putting your mind into your muscle. I've been doing martial arts, a lot since I was a child. So I find that that's some things that I prefer to, things that I lean into. Yeah, for my movement. So that was number 3.
All right.
Number 4, again, in no specific order, brain nutrients. Like I would always prefer people get it from whole foods, clean sources. But if they're not getting it, I travel a lot. I can be in 3 continents in a week, and sometimes kind of stuck sometimes eating hotel food. So supplementation. So some of my favorite brain supplements that's supportive: magnesium, so important for every physiological activity. Creatine, one of my favorites, kind of go to, not just for working out, but also for mental energy and vitality. Helps, I've noticed, with my focus when I have especially a lot of deep work, like I'm writing a book or something like that. Supplement maybe in my omega-3s, sulforaphane.
Yeah.
It's so these are kind of my go-tos. Vitamin D, if I'm not getting enough sunlight, can be very supportive for cognitive function. And basic antioxidants, the polyphenols, some of the things that could kind of combat the stress and the oxidative stress that we're faced through, financial stress, environmental stress, and so on. What are some of your kind of go-to for supplements?
Echo some of yours. Like sulforaphane is fascinating and largely underrated. Like I feel like that is one that Dr. Rhonda Patrick talks about it a lot.
Yes.
It's hugely beneficial. Obviously, the docosahexaenoic acid, DHA, big ones for me. With the magnesium, yes, I take a couple different forms. I take like a dimagnesium malate, which is more of a sustained release, and then a little bit more brainy. There's obviously the glycinate and there's the threonate, but the threonate, some of the literature is it's very rodent model research, but at the same time, like anecdotally, I notice a huge difference when I take a threonate. So notice that. Green tea extract for me, definitely throw that into the mix. The EGCG, again, it's kind of split when you look at the literature, but it's like some people have zero effect and some people seem to have huge effect. So it's not like it's always this statistically insignificant finding. It's like sometimes statistically very significant and then other times nil. So it leads me to believe that maybe some people do better with it than others. But for me, I notice a huge, huge difference when I do that.
Yeah, green tea is something I grew up drinking, so it's something that that's kind of my go-to.
Yeah.
Between that and kind of switching off between that and coffee.
Yeah. What about any adaptogens or anything like that?
Yeah, maybe so ashwagandha. I feel like I get a better workout and also mental workout when I'm using that. Various herbs, bacopa. Works for me. And again, I'm not a nutritionist or a medical doctor, but anecdotally, it's been very supportive for myself, for our team, also as well. Maybe some of the mushrooms. Yeah. Reishi for stress, lion's mane, potentially for BDNF also, going back to that.
Yeah, I was BDNF lights me up so much that I had to back my dose off significantly. Like I was taking upwards of over a gram, which isn't that much, but it was almost like lights me up so much that I feel like, oh my gosh, I almost need to come down from it. So I'm hypersensitive to that, but hugely effective. That and chaga, like I just feel those effects like immediately. So I preserve those for when I really need them.
Yeah. I remember like years ago, I would be like mushroom hunting and I've spent some time with Paul Stamets.
Oh, nice.
And it's, so I'm very fascinated about the research coming out about that.
Oh,
do you take it in supplement form or mix it, or you have a coffee or?
Yeah, I'll mix it. I have absolutely used the coffee. I mean, that's, Four Sigmatic came on the scene years ago, and that was, I've known Taro for quite a while. So it's, amazing, and it kind of got me into that world too, Paul Stamets' work, and just fascinated by it. And, as someone that grew up with mental illness in my family, I look at some of the literature that's coming out on, all kinds of ranges of mushrooms. I mean, it's just mind blowing, and it's so exciting to watch that research unfold. I think we've got an exciting future ahead of us with that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Number 5 golden rule, I would say for your brain is it's a positive peer group. Meaning that it's not just our biological networks and our neurological networks. I find that in terms of brain performance, it's our social networks. Who we see, this old cliche in personal development, who you spend time with is who you become. We have these mirror neurons that unconsciously we imitate the people we spend the most time with. they say if you spend time with 9 broke people, be careful because you're probably going to be number 10, right? That we're the average of the 5 people we spend the most time with. But even just eating meals with family, and friends. I lived for the past 10 years between, New York City and Los Angeles. When I came out here to Los Angeles, I would be lonely because I'd be away from my friends and my family. So I would host, these lunches or these dinners where we have thoughtful conversations, more than just like, how was your day? Good kind of thing. But things like, what did you learn today? What challenges are you facing? And I find that socially, so it's not just what we eat, but also how we eat. A lot of people I noticed, in work, and I do a lot of corporate training, that are eating these meals, but they're also on the computer at the same time. So I feel like, you want to be in that parasympathetic rest and digest. And I feel like social eating, having conversations, maybe putting the phone aside. Sometimes even some research suggests having the phone at the table could create, this uncalled for anxiety, this impulse to be able to reach for it, just because it's kind of how we're wired, being on our smart devices all day. But who we spend time with, I always tell people watch, WATCH. We tend to imitate the W. I use a lot of acronyms for shortcuts, words. We tend to adopt the same language as the people we spend time with. The A are actions. We tend to imitate the behaviors of the people, meaning that whether we, let's say, smoke has less to do with our neurological networks and rather does our friends smoke, right? The T are our thoughts. We talked about the power of thoughts. We tend to have the same thought patterns of the people we spend time with. The C is interesting, character. We tend to model the integrity of the people, that there's the same standards of the people we spend time with. And then finally, the H and watch are our habits. We've heard this phrase, first you create your habits, then your habits create you. You create your habits of meditation or exercise, prioritizing your sleep, whatever. And then those habits create us back. But on a scale of 0 to 10, going back to self-assessment, how positive and encouraging, because we all need people to cheerlead for us, to have our backs, to be kind to us, to challenge us. And if you haven't found that person yet, my suggestion would be to be that person, for somebody else, especially be that person for yourself. I think part of this, we don't hear it a lot, and it's maybe a little bit cliche, but it's kind of falling in love with that person in the mirror who's been through so much, but is still standing. But a positive peer group, I think it really elevates us, for greater success and performance.
No, it definitely does. I mean, all the way down to just body language and just being around just that entire piece. I spent the morning this morning with, I don't know if you know, Dr. John Deloney. He does a lot of double PhD in like the kind of relationship world. Mm-hmm. And it was really interesting because he said almost the same thing, talking about it from a relationship standpoint, where it's like, if you want to have, a healthy relationship, you spend time around people that also have healthy relationships and model that behavior. And there's so much, and it's like in a world where we've become a little bit more isolated on our devices, and we're lacking that, right? And how much of it, I think he said something like 70% of our communication is this nonverbal, right? So it's like we're missing out, and we're like, even if we feel like we've created an echo chamber for ourselves that we like with, opinions and things that agree with us and whatnot, if it's not in person and you're not really there surrounding yourself with these people, you go home to a toxic environment, but your digital life feels like it's all enriching. Yeah. Your toxic environment in person is going to overshadow your enriched digital life, right? And it's, that's just becoming ever so apparent to me. You see those things, and it's like, wow, I notice a keen difference in how I act, right, depending on who I'm around.
That's interesting. Yeah, I posted this on social media the other day. It's not my quote, but it said something to the effect where you can't change the people around you, but you can change the people around you.
I saw that. That was, and you're like, let that sink in. And I actually had to think about it for a second. Mm-hmm. Can't change the people. I'm like, oh, wait, I get it.
Yeah. So positivity and performance are definitely contagious for sure. So kind of doing a mental audit. And sometimes it's our friends and family that kind of maybe pull us away from, the life that we're supposed to have. And, I would remind people that you could love your family and your friends, but you could choose your peers, the people that, their attitudes, their assumptions, their standards, their expectations, have an effect in terms of how you live your life.
sometimes it's hard to break up with those relationships.
Very.
Because we all want to find comfort, and sometimes it's comfortable not changing.
Yeah, and I think those individuals could be sincere, like let's say they don't want to lose you because you're growing and you're always watching all these things and changing your life. So maybe they're unconsciously their fear that you're gonna be some kind of separation, that they'll move on, or maybe they don't want you to get your hopes up. But I also feel like people could be sincere, but also be sincerely wrong sometimes also as well. So you could love your friends and your family, and also you could choose the people that have that kind of impact and shape those words, actions, thoughts, character, and those habits.
Definitely.
Yeah. Number 6, I would say for optimal cognitive performance, a clean environment. We don't talk a lot about the environment enough, but I feel like our external world is a reflection of our internal world. And when even something simple, like you make your bed or you clean your desk or put everything in the right file on your computer, you also have clarity of thought. And so I think it's important to Marie Kondo your mind, if you will, and by taking care of your environment. But also for, the environmental, there could be toxins in our environment. There's off-gassing from furniture or carpets, so making sure you have clean water, clean air, lighting also as well. Unfortunately, in office buildings and schools, sometimes they, some of the fluorescent lights, probably not the best for our brain performance. It could create mental fatigue. Sometimes when they use it with rats, they'll have, some negative behavior that comes from it. I would say that reminder that our eyes are the part of our brain that's outside of our skull. And sometimes when you have visual fatigue, it leads to mental fatigue also as well. And it could be just poor lighting. So a clean environment would include, lighting, things in the air. Some people use air purifiers or something. Some research suggests electromagnetic fields could be affecting our brain, especially coming from our devices also as well, which is kind of scary, because if it's true, I know a lot of children or young teens that sleep with their phones like right underneath their pillows. Yeah. And so I don't know. Have you seen all the research?
Yeah, no, it's scary, and it's difficult because if you talk about it, you kind of get pegged as like woo-woo,
right.
But it's a very real thing. I mean, at our very core, we are electrical creatures, right? Like, I mean, you as a brain expert definitely know this all too well, right? We're hugely electrical, and it's like if you have an improper ground at your house, you're going to have electrical issues, right?
Yeah.
And it's something that we all need to be aware of. And I think, some people are taking measures to kind of improve it in their lives, but even simple things like put your phone on airplane mode at night,
or turning off your Wi-Fi, or at certain hours. We just have a timer in our home, that just turns off at a certain time and then turns back on, just for convenience. The environment it dramatically affects our internal environment. Even for habit design, and structuring routines, it's always kind of the mantra is you want to make what's good for you easy, and what's not so good for you want to make it more difficult. So even with the phone, I'll have it in our bathroom as an example. So I'm not on it right before I go to sleep and first thing in the morning. But that's a simple way of kind of structuring your environment.
Yeah, I mean, blue light aside, just the simple stimulation from something that you're getting out of your phone. Like, generally, you're not looking at your phone for something relaxing. You're going to be stimulated. If you're checking your Instagram feed right before bed, that doesn't sound like the best thing to do.
Yeah, I mean, because never before have we had access to the world's information. Just scrolling, you get to scroll through a 1,000 different posts, and it goes literally limitless. But that's a lot of cognitive switching, right? Going from this to find information to this kind of data. And, the human brain didn't evolve, to have that kind of stimulus.
Yeah. I mean, extremes, one way and the other, like extreme sad, extreme happy, extreme whoa, this is too much.
And when people wonder why they're struggling with, sleep, not just the blue light that you mentioned, but just the activity and the stimulus, from whatever the content it happens to be. So. Yeah.
Have you ever used a PEMF mat, like the pulse electromagnetic field mats?
Yeah, I do a good amount of basic biohacking. I notice a lot of the biohacking tends to imitate nature.
Yeah.
Like say if you have a grounding mat kind of imitates the benefit of being grounded to the earth,
Yeah.
right? Or, being barefoot and touching the grass or the sand. Some of the red light therapy it can be modeled, through the sun and so on. Cold therapy but we have a couple of PEMF mats, to help us kind of energize, our cells and your mitochondria. Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely notice a pretty immediate state shift when I use them. So that's kind of in the same field a little bit.
Yeah.
All right, so that was 6.
That was 6.
Right.
Oh, good memory.
Well, it's only numbers. Not ask me to remember everything that's going on.
Yeah, maybe at the end I could give somebody a quick trick to memorize all 10.
Perfect.
So 0 to 10, clean environment. People could rate themselves because everyone wants to know what the magic pill is for an incredible memory, or a brighter brain. And I feel like there's no magic pill, but there is a process, right? And genius definitely leaves clues. People are high achievers like yourself. You're doing things that just the average person is just not doing, and you get the benefit of it. Number 7, why don't we talk about sleep, right? For greater cognitive performance, if you're not sleeping, how do you feel the next day? How's your brain? You're forgetful. You might not have focus. You might be struggling with mental fatigue. You're not going to be able to solve problems and create and innovate, the way that you could if you on a good night's rest. So, and sleep is a I don't talk about this like publicly a lot, but I had severe sleep issues all my whole life. I struggle with very severe sleep apnea, which is a breathing disorder. And from 2010 to 2015, I averaged about 90 minutes to 2 hours a night total.
Whoa.
And it wasn't at one stretch. It was just, a lot of wake ups because I would stop breathing about 250 times a night. And each time counts if I stop breathing for at least 10 seconds. So I would wake up suffocating. And, so sleep is something I really lean into. It's one of the largest, we do lots of podcasts on this and, dedicate a whole chapter on the book. But, so optimizing your sleep. Some of my favorite things to do that works for me. And I had a very evasive surgery that helped. They took out down the street at UCLA, they took out my uvula, soft palate, my tonsils just to create more airflow. And my sleep jumped to 4 hours. I later tested my parents and all my siblings, and they have severe apnea also as well. So, and then, I grew up with a traumatic brain injury and I had learning disabilities. So I would pull all these all-nighters as a kid. So my habits were really kind of wired that way. And then traveling, being in different time zones, jet lag, waking up in foreign environments, really did a number. So it created a perfect storm where sleep was life-threatening. I've been hospitalized a number of times from just lack of sleep. But, some of my suggestions with caffeine, I don't do caffeine past about 2 p.m. For me, I am very sensitive. So I'm jealous of people who could have an espresso before they go to bed. It's interesting, like the brain loves rhythm, right? And structure. So most people have an alarm to wake up. I think it's more important to have an alarm to go to sleep, even on the weekends and keeping at a certain schedule. Also evolutionary, it's as a hunter gatherer, you would know it'd be time to sleep because there would be a dip in 2 environmental elements, a dip in temperature and a dip in lighting, decrease in lighting. So on the colder side. And that could be also like taking a warm bath with a magnesium bath, which the magnesium would help, people to rest. But when you leave that sauna or you leave that hot bath, then your core body temperature drops, which is a signal, for melatonin production. And lighting, we talked about this with our devices, switching off just because even a little bit of light, not just the blue light, can confuse the mind into thinking it's still daylight. Because, again, as hunter-gatherers, it was one thing for it to drop in temperature and light, but with human, modern conveniences, you have a thermostat, So it doesn't necessarily get colder automatically unless you set it that way, and proactive. And, same thing with lighting. We have, indoor lighting and our screens and everything. So those are the things that, and then I meant waking up and getting direct sunlight first thing in the morning is kind of a must, for me. Do you have any kind of go-to non-negotiables when it comes to sleep?
Routine, like same kind of thing, right? It's just like that is, you got to be careful not to get obsessive and stressed about the routine, which is what ends up happening.
Which also includes for food also as well.
Yes.
Some people are so stressed about food, it could almost, negate the benefits from some of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, with sleep, I'll find myself, okay, I want to be in bed at 9. Well, the next thing you know, like at 8:50, I'm starting to get ready. Then I'm getting ready at 8:45. So it's like you create this monumental routine. And I think that is not exactly the route you want to go. It's like you want to keep it realistic and keep it sustainable. You know? So for me, it's quick and easy routines. So for me, I'll typically, after the kids go to sleep, after I put the kids down, I'll go and I'll meditate for 20 minutes in front of the red light, right? So, and part of the time I'll keep my eyes open, part of the time I'll keep my eyes closed. For me, a lot of it, the photobiomodulation isn't just about what's hitting my eyes, it also is what's hitting the skin too, right?
Yeah.
So it's, people don't realize how much our mitochondria still takes a serious impact from just the external cues. It's not just from our eyes, right? So just being in front of that red light. So doing that is something I'm pretty religious about whenever and even when I'm traveling, I tend to bring a small red light with me. And that's the one biohacking kind of weird thing that I have really bought into, like all the way, because I've noticed such a solid anecdotal experience with it. Also for me, ever since my son was born about almost 6 years ago, I developed pretty serious insomnia after he was born, simply because he was very colicky. So he would wake up dozens of times throughout the night. So it was ridiculously broken, and it just sent me into a death spiral of broken sleep where that just became habitual. So it's been a struggle since then, so you're super aware of it when that happens. So as you, as someone that's had a sleep disorder, it's very, very rough. And you learn to realize that sometimes you can reverse engineer what works, but you think, I figured it out,
Right.
And then you try to reverse engineer it. So you do it again. And then, well, that time it didn't work. But one thing that I've definitely noticed is the red light, the sauna relatively close before bed. If I do any cold plunging, it is short bursts. I used to try to go for, I'm going to sit in here for 5 minutes and torture myself.
At night.
Yeah. And it's just, that would, or in the morning, and it would backfire. I would end up getting sick, or I'd end up too much reactive oxygen species. But if I go in for just 1 minute, this isn't a, what polling contest. This is me just like, I'm not trying to go in here as long as I can.
Yeah.
It was like just enough to, I guess, get enough that catecholamine effect. So like 60 seconds in an ice bath, that's all you need.
Yeah.
And then sauna or vice versa. And that seems to be highly effective for me.
Yeah, for me, I do the cold plunging in the morning, because it has, for me, it's even better than caffeine. It just really wakes me up and kind of like a big nervous system reset. And then I feel like that motivation molecules kind of last for hours for me. If I do cold at night, I find it wakes me up. But everyone's a little bio-individual.
Yeah.
But I definitely like heat at night.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if you've seen the evidence on, you're familiar with the glymphatic system, but sauna and the glymphatic system essentially creating more intracranial pressure, so you can actually do the glymphatic sort of quote unquote brainwashing, right? So it's actually the only time that glymphatic system is able to really flush is typically when you're sleeping or when there's enough intracranial pressure. So when you go in a sauna, you create more of that pressure. And that's been huge for me. And it's, I just got to be careful not to overdo it. I really like the sauna. And sometimes it's one of those things, like if I train a lot and I'm working out a lot, and then I also add the stress of a sauna and go too far, then it ends up hindering my sleep, because I'm just in this, adrenaline cycle of overtraining and overstimulation.
And you don't work out too close to bedtime.
I work out first thing in the morning.
Yeah, likewise.
Which is interesting, as you probably notice, like my body wakes up early anticipating the workout. It's very interesting where if I'm not working out in the morning, I actually feel funky. Like my body's kind of like, what's going on here? We're ready to go. When are we going? When are we going? When are we going? But it is a little bit of a catch-22, because like it's difficult for me to force myself to take time off. And that has been a big piece of my sleep issues too, is oh, I just need more sleep pressure, so I need to work out harder.
Right.
So I'll run myself into the ground and I'll sleep, but I'll never recover if I do that.
Do you find yourself taking naps, or does that affect your sleep pressure?
Cannot nap. Yeah. And first of all, I have a hard time napping. It just doesn't really work. But it definitely affects the sleep pressure. Like we've all probably experienced this, but this happens to me a lot, where by the time 8 o'clock rolls around, if I do sit down and watch a show with my wife or something, I'm bobbing for apples within minutes.
Yeah.
And if that happens, if I start bobbing for apples and start falling asleep, then my sleep that night is destroyed. Even if I'm only sleeping, even if I only bob for apples and fall asleep for 10 seconds, it's like my body was telling me you should go to bed right now. So my advice for people when that usually happens is, if you're falling asleep on the couch, stop, go to bed.
That's a good trigger, without a doubt. My day, it's interesting. I tend to be cognitively efficient, and I don't get this perfect. I tend to, in the morning, I create. Like I'm not so much interested in input as much as I am output. I find myself very creative. And so that's where I go and script out podcasts, or I'll write, my next book or something like that. In the afternoon, I'll go from create to consume. And that's where I'm doing a lot of my research, or listening or reading books, listening to podcasts, those kind of things. And then the evening, the third C after create, consume, is clear. That my mind, I just want to kind of empty it. And so, planning out the day, the next day out on paper, so I don't have to think about it, doing some yoga nidra, it helps me to clear my mind, maybe journaling, conversations with my wife, just kind of getting thoughts out. So then I could just kind of decompress. Yeah. And that's where, really, I get a lot of benefit from that. So I don't have to kind of switch from, creating and consuming and kind of clearing. It's just kind of spread out that way throughout the day. But that's where, for me, it's my element.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's sleep. Number 8 is a really quick one. Just a reminder, brain protection, meaning that I had, 3 bad head injuries before age 12, and your brain is very resilient, but it's also very fragile. I get to work with a lot of athletes that have TBIs or concussions, and Daniel Amen, who's been on your show, has done all his brain scans, 250,000 brain scans, and so I do a lot of his protocols. But just reminding to have your kids wear a helmet, as an example, and protect their brain. It's your most valuable asset, by far. Yeah,
my wife just had a TBI about a month ago off her horse. And I just got a hyperbaric chamber at my office now. And we're like doing the whole deal. And my work with like special operations and those guys on the ketone side was predominantly in that world, right? So the ketones are a very big part of most, kind of post-concussive, at least in certain settings. It's not widely accepted in certain medical communities, but at least in the military, it's like standard protocol, like ketogenic diet. You have, exogenous ketones, if possible, even HBOT. But it's crazy how much I've worked in that world. But then it took it happening to my wife for me to really, really take it serious, and see this is close to home, and understanding, seeing what's happened even to my wife over the last month, watching just, short-term memory just being off,
right.
Headaches here and there, and just her emotions, you notice these things that, I might notice indirectly a little bit with special forces operators that I work with, but I don't know the inner workings of their personality to see the things are different. I can only go by their own, and I always say, so difficult to sell insurance, because it's so hard to tell someone to protect your brain because this could happen. I'll deal with it when I get there.
Right.
All it takes is one. And some of the stuff that we're talking about, for neuroprotection, neuroinflammation, these things are protection as well. A healthy brain is going to be a more ability to bounce back. It's going to be more resilient.
I'm a big fan of hyperbaric oxygen. It's that was part of my protocol for my recovery for TBI. So I did 40 sessions, and I had such a marked improvement. We ended up getting a heart chamber also, just because it's and for people who are listening, most cities have facilities that they could access a soft heart chamber. Yeah. And which increases also blood flow into those regions of the brain that might be damaged. Yeah.
It's a fascinating concept, and wish it was more widely accepted, because I think it can really help a lot of people.
Without a doubt.
Yeah.
Number 9, and I'm preaching to the choir if anyone who's watching this now, would be new learnings. So part of keeping, your cognitive performance, accessing more of that potential is always be learning. The brain, it grows, same as the muscle, right? You give it novelty and you give it nutrition. And the same thing with your mental muscles. And so learning new things every single day and really making it part of your routine. My favorite way to ingest information happens to be reading. We published the largest, most popular speed reading program in the world. And I feel like reading is to your mind what exercise is to your body. If somebody has decades of experience like you do, and it's in a book, somebody could read that book in a handful of days, then they could download decades in the days. And that's such a huge advantage, right? And so, most people have a to-do list, and I would suggest that people also have a to-learn list also as well. And just learning the information, I just want to remind people that knowledge by itself is not power. It has the potential to be a lot of power, but it's in the application. So, all the podcasts, YouTube, courses, books, none of it works unless we work. I really do believe that for every hour people spend learning something, they have to dedicate an equal hour implementing it. Otherwise that, somebody who reads a book and doesn't apply it, it's the equivalent of somebody, you're no better off than someone who's illiterate. There was a study done, it was on the cover of Time magazine. I don't know if you saw this, but the study was on these nuns that were living longer than the average person. And, the study was called Aging with Grace. So I thought that was a beautiful name of a study. And, but these women, they attest that their longevity was, part of it was their emotional faith and gratitude, but the other half is they were lifelong learners, in their community. They were always reading and having deep conversations and discussions. And so potentially learning every day could add years to your life. And I would say also life to your years. So on a scale of 0 to 10, how much are we learning every single day, and what's on your to-learn list? And so like every 30 days, I like to learn a new subject or a new skill, just because there's this Mark Twain quote that says, "Don't let school get in the way of your education." Mm-hmm. A lot of people feel like when they graduate, I see, and we have students in all 195 nations online for accelerated learning. Usually there's a dip when people graduate school, in terms of cognitive performance, and also later when they retire. Often when people retire, they retire their mind, mm-hmm. and usually their body isn't far behind. So yeah, I'll always be learning.
Are you familiar with Dr. Tommy Wood?
No.
Dr. Tommy Wood, he's up in Washington. He's been on my channel. He published a paper, I guess it was earlier this year. It was basically one of the hallmark indicators or leading indicators of Alzheimer's is when you stop using your brain. And it's like you find it kind of coincidental that people start to develop Alzheimer's after they retire. And that was part of what they had looked at. And it was just like, it truly does come down. If you don't use it, you do lose it. Yeah. And all the way down to, from a neuroinflammatory side, like less activity in the brain, there was more brain inflammation, more tau proteins, beta amyloid plaque, which we know is, could or could not be related to Alzheimer's now, but we know there is some correlation there. And it was just fascinating, like just to hear that it really, like so much of it is like, just like your muscles, it's like stimulation is everything. And if you can just keep on it and dedicate a little bit of time to new learning, or just at the very least, some maintenance.
Yeah, novelty and nutrition for your body and your brain. Obviously your brain is part of your body, but having lost my grandmother to Alzheimer's, this is something that we're very, very passionate about. We donated all the proceeds to my books to Alzheimer's research, specifically for women. Women are twice as likely to experience Alzheimer's than men. A lot of the research happened to be on male brains and treatments on male brains. But yeah, it's, if you want to stave off, mental decline, definitely keep active. Same thing with your body and brain. Yeah.
All right, what's big number 10?
Yeah, number 10, I reserve for something that's pretty invisible, but it's ubiquitous. It's stress management. On a scale of 0 to 10, how well are you coping with stress? We know that chronic stress could potentially shrink the human brain. When you're in that kind of fight or flight, you have cortisol and adrenaline, it also kind of holds you hostage, in your survivor brain, as opposed, and it keeps you away from your executive functioning, your ability to solve problems, be creative, and so much more. So do you have mechanisms in place or routines or some kind of habit to be able to reduce stress? Do you have a go-to for yourself besides working out?
Yeah, I was going to say, exercise is a very good one, but at the same time, that can also become the opposite if I'm not careful. So, for me, meditation is a very big one. I found just doodling, just like literally just like it started with my kids having, their crayons and stuff like that. And then I'm like just sitting there kind of doodling and coloring. And I'm like, wow, this is therapeutic. Something about like the smoothness of the colored pencils. It's like running over the paper was very soothing to me. And I found that, and I'm not a good artist at all. Like I'm terrible, but just coloring little things and like even coloring with my kids. I'm like, oh my gosh, like I can look at my heart rate drops. It's just like I just get into this zone. Other things that just bring me into a flow state, things that I have to really concentrate on, but aren't overstimulating. So things like, rock climbing at like a rock climbing gym or something where you're not in like a super stressful, dangerous situation, which I enjoy that too, but that's a different thing. Anything where I can just hyper concentrate in sort of a meditative way. Getting out in nature in general, that also just does it for me. Disconnecting. And for me, I don't even have to meditate. I just do this practice of non-reacting. How do I just not react to things? It's a little more deliberate because sometimes meditation can be difficult if you're wound up, even though arguably that's the best time to do it. And just you can't get yourself in that state. But just a simple act of non-reacting, like I'm just gonna, I've got an itch on my leg. I'm not going to itch it. I'm going to be aware of it. And next thing you know, you're in a state of meditation.
Right. Yeah. I notice friends that complain about, they say, like, I don't have time to meditate. I'm so busy. I'm like, well, you really should meditate twice today. That's more a reason to do it more often. Yeah. Besides meditation and nature, which are my go-tos, for me, a few more things. I would say body work does really well for me. Gets me in that kind of back into my body. What I do is just like what you do and most people do, is very cognitive. So that's important. Number 2, reading fiction is very relaxing for me. So nonfiction, I used to be like a nonfiction fiend. I read a book a day for 4.5 years, nonfiction. But I, I'm in my 50s now. So I'm thinking like, I've learned that fiction reading also has a lot of benefit. I feel like nonfiction, you learn through information, and fiction reading, you're learning through imagination. And the only caveat is I don't read nonfiction before bed because it puts me in that kind of executive thinking, executive brain function. But I will read fiction before going to sleep. And it's, and fiction reading, this is off topic, but it's been shown to improve your EQ, that emotional quotient through empathy, seeing things through other perceptual positions. And it's just entertaining for me. The third thing I would say is not as convenient. We have a float tank for the past 10 years, and this is a sensory deprivation tank. Have you had experience with? Yeah.
Unreal. Yeah.
Yeah. So for relaxation, especially with my sleep issues, I have to do a lot to kind of compensate just to get to a norm. And so whether it's the magnesium and the salts that help me to relax, but you're basically in a pod where you can't see anything, you can't hear anything, the temperature of the water, and we put about 900 pounds of salts in there, is about body temperature. So you can't really feel yourself separate from the environment. And some people might think that's a little scary, but I find that turning off those senses, it's so relaxing for me. It allows me to go really deep, and when I come out, I'm just in this blissful, relaxed state. Everything everything looks richer and sounds richer, and it's a great way for me to phase into that kind of rest and digest. And most cities, again, have a spa that have these kind of services.
Well, everyone's probably wondering, because I'm still hung up on the fact that you're in your 50s and you look like you're 36. Oh. So is maybe it's the float tanks? I don't know.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite modalities. And also I feel like if I do it during the day, I'm very creative also. Yeah. Meaning that I come out and I have all these new ideas, and that's really special for me.
Nice, man.
Yeah.
Okay, so you saved the best part for last because you mentioned to me offline that you might have a way to help us retain these.
Yeah, in just a few minutes. Yeah, I could show people how to remember these 10 things forwards and backwards. So
Okay.
maybe I could.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, so there's a technique that I drew upon from ancient Greece. It's a 2,500-year-old memory technique. Way before I was always curious. We pull in my work from modern day learning theory, neuroscience, but also ancient wisdom. Like, what did people do before there were printing presses and computers? How they remember things? And the ancient Greeks, the orators would use they call it the memory palace today, and it's a way of using a location to anchor certain key points that you want to remember. And I use this a lot in Hollywood to help people remember lines. I train a lot of the top TED speakers how to memorize their presentations. So if you ever have to give a presentation or want to be able to remember facts like this is a great technique. So I'll walk you through an example because everybody who's watching has a different home and things. So I'll take my office. All right. So I'm going to take you through visually through my words 10 places in my office, and what we'll do is we'll take the 10 keys for cognitive performance, those golden rules, and we'll put each one in those 10 places. All right.
Okay.
And so we'll learn through doing it. And I encourage everyone to do this along with us and be like a little interactive activity. So all right, so imagine our office is in Westchester, New York, a suburb of New York City. And so imagine you fly in there, car picks you up, and I'm going to name 10 places and then associate it to the golden rules. So the first place, we're in the suburbs, so imagine a lot of trees and a big glass building. You pull up, the first place is the parking lot. And I'll just ask you to repeat it so you have your verbal memory. So the first place is
Parking lot.
Parking lot. And you want to remember when you get out, the first golden rule was a good brain diet. So just imagine there's a buffet of your favorite brain foods there.
Yeah.
So
All right.
pomegranates and the walnuts and the blue brain berries and so on. And then you can make it a little so you could see it, because most people don't remember things because they just hear it. But if you could hear it, see it, and feel it, you're more likely to remember because you're recruiting more of your nervous system. And so you can add emotion to it, because the key to a long-term memory is information times emotion becomes more memorable. So you could imagine there's a big food fight with your friends, you throwing around these brain foods. And if it makes you smile or smirk, you're probably more likely to remember it. All right, so we're doing this together. There's a waterfall and it creates a moat around our building, so you have to cross a bridge. So the second place is the bridge, right? And I want you to remember, as you're crossing the bridge, you're stepping on all these ants, right? Automatic negative thoughts. And not that you ever do this, but ants. And notice that you don't have to repeat it many times. You just see it once and you make it kind of emotional and you'll retain it. And we'll test everyone at the end. And then you open the door, you go into the building. The third place is the elevator. So what's the third place? The third place.
Oh, elevator.
Yeah, elevator. Yep. And then the third golden rule in this case was exercise. Yep. So as soon as you get in the elevator, you're working out. So
Or you're doing the opposite of working out. You're not taking the stairs.
That's true. But imagine you go in there and there are your workout machines, there are free weights there, or somebody's doing Pilates or whatever your favorite exercise happens to be. Maybe you're just doing kettlebell stuff in the elevator. All right. You get out. The fourth place is the hallway. So the fourth place is the hallway. And then it was brain supplements. Yep. We talked about the nootropics. And so I just imagine, and I'm just making this up, that there are big bottles of, let's say, your DHAs, your magnesium, sulforaphane, and you're just kind of like Indiana Jones or Lara Croft, and you're just jumping over these bottles, or Donkey Kong, right? And there's supplements and pills everywhere, right? And it's kind of sounds silly and childish, but how fast can children learn things?
Yeah.
You know, languages or musical instruments or anything
learn
like
by
that.
play is like a very big thing.
Yeah. And some people say, well, I stopped playing because I grew older. And I would say, no, maybe you grew older because you stopped playing, right? They go kind of hand in hand, especially when it comes to learning. So that's number 4. The brain supplements in the hallway. You open the door to my office, and immediately to the left is the 5th place, which is the closet. So the 5th place is the closet.
The closet.
Yeah. And then in there, the golden rule was a positive peer group. So I just want you to imagine all your positive, encouraging friends, they're in the closet. All right. And they're just really happy. They're celebrating. They're encouraging you. Big party going on in the closet. All right, so we're halfway there. That's number 5. You come out, the 6th place is a person, actually, the receptionist.
Okay.
All right, receptionist. And the golden rule was a clean environment. So imagine the receptionist is cleaning the environment, and so mopping or vacuuming, maybe dusting, but really clean environment. All right, just take a split second and remember that. And if you can't imagine it, just imagine you can imagine it. All right. All right. Behind the receptionist is the 7th place. We have an exotic fish tank. Okay. All right. And the golden rule was sleep. So just imagine the fish are all sleeping, but just make it dramatic. Like maybe they're in their pajamas. You see Nemo and Dory, maybe they're in their bunk beds, they're snoring, but just imagine the fish are just you're sleeping with the fishes, right? Yeah. That's number 7. And then the 8th place, you go around the corner and there's the door to the classroom. Maybe we're going to do a speed reading course together. So the 8th place would be the door, right? Okay. And we want to remember brain protection. So just imagine the door's locked, but there is a hook, and on the hook is a helmet. And you put on the helmet and you headbutt the door, and it's not that you ever do that. It's not good for your brain, but it for case of memory, it just it splinters open, right? It crashes open. So that the helmet reminds you, protect your brain, which was one of the golden rules. And then finally, the last 2, in front of the classroom is a whiteboard. And so imagine me there drawing on the whiteboard, and I draw 2 words. I draw the golden rule, which was new learnings. So maybe I'm drawing in your favorite color marker. What's your favorite color?
Green.
Green. So in green, I'm writing new learnings right in the front of the classroom on the whiteboard. And then finally, the 10th place, we have all these bonsai trees on the side of the room. And so the 10th place are these bonsai trees, these Japanese plants. And the golden rule was stress management. So whatever you do to cope with stress, imagine you're doing it on the bonsai trees. So if I'm getting body work done, I'm doing it on the bonsai trees, right? If you're meditating, you're doing it on the bonsai trees, or float tank on the bonsai tree, whatever it happens to be. All right. So how it works, the memory palace, is we tend to remember things based on location. Because as a hunter-gatherer, we didn't necessarily have to memorize a lot of words and numbers, but we didn't need to know where things were. Where's the fertile soil? Where's the clean water? Where's the enemy tribe? That was our survival. So now you have the 10 locations, and we placed the 10 keys. The first place was the parking lot.
Yes.
And what does that trigger in your mind?
So, yeah, a bunch of people throwing fruit around and all the berries and everything.
Yeah.
Like that. Yep.
So if people had to give like a TEDx talk about what they learned here today, they would say, okay, good brain diet. They would just mentally walk through my office. It'd be a lot easier if people were using their own home or the mall close to them or whatever. You go and you cross the bridge, and then
bunch of ants.
Yeah. So you're killing those ants, automatic negative thoughts. Yeah. You open the door, you go step into the elevator.
Yeah. And there's people doing Pilates in the elevator.
Right. So exercise, and that was the third golden rule. And then you get into the hallway, and you're jumping over
supplements.
Yeah, all the brain supplements. Perfect. You open the door, immediately to your left is the closet. Yep. And inside the closet are
all your peers just hanging out.
Exactly. Your positive peers. And that reminds you of that. And we're halfway there. And then number 6 was the receptionist. Yep. And the receptionist is what activity there?
Cleaning up.
Yeah. Cleaning your area, cleaning your space, cleaning your environment. Behind the receptionist was the fish tank. Yep. And that reminds you of?
Yeah. Nemo's sleeping there. And
there you go. Yep. Sleep. And then you go to the classroom, the door is locked, and you put on
the helmet.
So that reminds you to protect your brain. Yep. You get into the classroom, the whiteboard, I'm drawing 2 words.
Yep. New
learnings. And then finally, you look at the bonsai trees, and it reminds you of...
Yep, I'm sitting in a sauna on a bonsai tree.
Perfect. For representing stress management. And so the whole idea behind this, and it takes a lot more time to explain than it is to actually do. Yeah. And a picture is worth 1,000 words. But the whole idea here is there's no such thing as a good or bad memory. There's a trained memory and an untrained memory. There was just never no class in school that taught us how to remember things. And so that's really, my focus in my work is to teach meta learning how to learn. I think it's one of the most important skills to master in the 21st century, because when you can learn how to focus and read and understand and remember, you could apply it towards anything: medicine, money, martial arts, music, marketing, and everything gets easier in your life.
Oh, definitely, man.
And I bet you, I challenge everyone who's watching this to see if they remember, and they could put it in the comments. And I challenge everyone who could do it backwards. So
Interesting. Just turn around and walk the same direction out, or the opposite
Exactly.
direction out. Well, Jim, where can everyone find you, and where can we find your book?
So we're very proud of the book. It's a book for a post-pandemic world, AI world, so that it's newly updated, how to use AI to improve your HI, human intelligence, and nootropics, and so much more. Limitlessbook.com. Very simple, limitlessbook.com. And probably the best place to find us is YouTube. We don't have the kind of following you do, but we have over 1 million subscribers there, and it's just something we're really passionate about. Can I challenge everyone to actually take a screenshot wherever they're consuming this right now, and tag Thomas and tag myself, and share one thing that you're going to do, a new behavior for a better brain.
Nice. I love that.
I love that. And I'll actually, because you'll tag us, I'll see it and I'll repost a few, and I'll gift out a number of copies to your community just as a thank you.
All right. Yeah, you hear that, and I'll share them up as well. So, well, Jim, thank you, my man.
Thank you.